The champagne glass shattered against my laptop screen the exact moment Lillian Green's livestream began. There I was, surrounded by empty takeout containers in my pajamas at 2 in the afternoon, while on screen. The woman who would change my life adjusted her perfectly tailored blazer and smiled into the camera with confidence I couldn't even fake on my best days. Welcome to Business Unfiltered. I'm Lillian Green, and today we're talking about reclaiming your power after failure. I froze, my fingers still dripping with spilled champagne, my pathetic celebration for yet another rejection email. The irony wasn't lost on me. Grand Rapids' most successful female CEO was talking about failure while I was living it, complete with day-old mascara streaks and the lingering scent of defeat. Her voice cut through my apartment like a blade, authoritative yet somehow intimate. Every successful person you admire has a graveyard of failures they never show you. Something about her green eyes, intense, unyielding, made me believe she wasn't just reciting motivational garbage. The slight quiver in her lower lip when she paused suggested she'd earned these words through experience. I should have been sending out more resumes. Instead, I found myself creating an account, easily possible, just to ask a question during the conda portion. My fingers hovered over the keys, trembling slightly before I typed, "How do you rebuild when you've lost everything that defined you?" The question disappeared into the stream of comments, and I laughed at myself for thinking she'd notice. But then, "Elle Possible asks how to rebuild after losing what defined you." Lillian's expression shifted subtly, the corporate mask slipping to reveal something more human. First, recognize that nothing external truly defines you. Second, understand that reinvention is rarely clean or Instagram-worthy. She looked directly into the camera, and the hair on my arms stood up as if she could actually see me through the screen. The messy middle is where most people quit. Don't. I became obsessed after that. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I'd clean myself up just to watch her live streams, as if she might somehow know if I showed up disheveled. The comments section became my lifeline, a place where I could exist as someone with potential rather than the unemployed marketing graduate drowning in student debt. Week 3, she remembered my username. Week 5, she answered 3 of my questions. Week 7, she messaged me privately, "Your questions consistently cut through the noise. Have you considered applying your analytical skills professionally?" My heart thundered in my chest, drowning out the steady patter of rain against my window. I read and reread her message, fingers hovering over the keyboard as I considered my response. The faint scent of the instant coffee cooling beside me mingled with the clean laundry smell of the one good shirt I'd put on for her live stream. "Currently seeking opportunities that value analytical thinking," I replied, trying to sound professional instead of desperate. Her response came faster than I expected. "Green Digital has an opening for a content strategist. Application deadline tonight. Your insights suggest you'd be an asset." I applied within the hour, crafting my resume with shaking hands, doubting every word while simultaneously hoping beyond reason. What were the chances? A woman like Lillian Green noticing someone like me? 3 days later, as I sat in Green Digital's sleek waiting room, stomach knotted with anxiety and palms slick with sweat, I had no idea that this interview would lead to the most complicated relationship of my life. Or that 6 months later, I would discover the truth. Lillian hadn't randomly found me in her comment section. She'd been watching my small design account for months before she ever reached out. The elevator to Green Digital's 15th floor headquarters seemed determined to give me a panic attack. Each floor brought me closer to meeting Lillian in person, not as a faceless username or a desperate job applicant, but face to face. The leather portfolio in my hands grew damp from my grip. When the doors finally parted, I stepped into a world of glass and steel that screamed success. The receptionist pointed me toward a waiting area, where the magazines were all current and the water was infused with actual cucumber slices. I felt like an imposter in my one good blazer, purchased secondhand, but steamed meticulously that morning. "Ellie Ross?" Her voice reached me before I saw her. I stood too quickly, bumping the water pitcher and sending ripples across its surface. That's when our eyes met for the first time without a screen between us. Lillian Green was smaller in person than she appeared online, but somehow more commanding. Her brunette hair was twisted into an elegant knot, and those green eyes, damn, they really were that vibrant. "You're shorter than I expected," she said, extending her hand. No hello, no pleasantries, Just an observation that made me laugh nervously. And you're exactly as intimidating as I expected. Something flickered across her face. Amusement? Interest? She gestured toward her office, and I caught the faint scent of something expensive as she passed. Not floral or sweet, but something woodsy and complex. Her office commanded the corner of the building, all windows and city views. Grand Rapids spread out below us, the afternoon light glinting off the Grand River in the distance. The space was minimalist except for a wall of awards and a single photo of Lillian shaking hands with the governor. So, she began, settling behind her desk. Explain why someone with your online insights has been unemployed for 7 months. The question stung, but I'd prepared for it. The insights come easy, the confidence to present them doesn't. For 2 hours we talked strategy and analytics, moving from formal interview to casual conversation. She pulled up my small design portfolio on her screen, work I'd never mentioned in the livestream comments, and critiqued it with surgical precision. You've been following me, I said, unable to hide my surprise. Her lips curved slightly. I researched potential investments thoroughly. The interview ended with a job offer, content strategist reporting directly to her. The salary was double what I'd hoped for, with the caveat that I'd be working closely with her on the company's rebranding. Starting tomorrow. That night, alone in my apartment, I stared at the ceiling fans spinning lazily above my bed, replaying every word, every glance. Why me? What had she seen in my comments that warranted such attention? And why did my skin still tingle when I remembered her saying, I think we'll work well together, Ellie. Day 1 was orientation. Day 3, I was staying late revising proposals. Day 7, Lillian and I were alone in the conference room at 9 p.m., takeout containers pushed aside as we debated audience targeting. You challenge me, she said suddenly, leaning back in her chair. The office was empty except for us, the lights of downtown creating a halo around her silhouette. Most people here are too afraid to disagree with me. I gathered my courage. Maybe they're afraid of losing their jobs. I was unemployed yesterday, going back wouldn't be such a fall. She laughed, a real laugh that transformed her face. How's that working for you, the fearlessness? Ask me again when I get my first performance review. Working directly under Lillian was like being caught in a beautiful storm. Her expectations were impossible, her feedback cutting, yet I thrived on it. Every approval felt earned. Every correction made me better. What I didn't expect was how quickly the lines would blur. Her hand lingering on my shoulder during presentations. My eyes finding hers across crowded meetings. The way we'd finish each other's sentences when pitching to clients. The company whispers started in week 4. By week 6, even the delivery guy was giving us knowing looks when he'd find us working late. They think we're sleeping together, I blurted one night as we reviewed analytics in her office. The lights of the city sparkled below, and the bottle of wine we'd opened had loosened my tongue. Lillian didn't look up from her tablet. People always try to explain women's success through sex or nepotism. She finally raised her eyes to mine. Does it bother you? Only because it's not true, I said, instantly regretting my honesty. The silence stretched between us, thick with possibility. She moved her hand across the table, her fingertips nearly touching mine. My heart hammered against my ribs. Would it be so terrible? She asked softly. If it were? The company retreat was Lillian's idea, a weekend at a private lakeside property to build team cohesion. Everyone knew it was really to celebrate landing the Midwest's largest healthcare provider as a client. My contribution to the pitch had earned me appreciative nods from the executive team, but Lillian's private well done in the elevator afterward meant more than their collective approval. Lake Michigan in early summer was spectacular, all rolling dunes and water stretching endlessly toward the horizon. The company had rented 5 luxury cabins spread along a private beach. I shared mine with 2 designers from the creative team, but they spent most of their time at the makeshift bar by the fire pit. I'd been avoiding Lillian since that night in her office. 3 weeks of keeping conversations strictly professional, of stepping back when she moved too close. Not because I wasn't interested, damn, I was interested, but because everything I'd built could collapse if I crossed that line. On the second evening, as sunset painted the sky in violent pinks and oranges, I escaped the drinking games to walk along the shore. The sand was still warm beneath my bare feet, the water lapping gently at the beach. I didn't expect to find Lillian sitting alone on a driftwood log, shoes off, hair loose around her shoulders. "Mind if I join you?" I asked, already regretting my decision to walk this way. She patted the space beside her without looking up. The transformation was startling. Gone was the CEO in tailored suits, replaced by a woman in worn jeans with her knees pulled up to her chest. "I hate these things," she admitted, her voice almost lost in the sound of the waves. "Pretending to be casual with people who fear me." "They respect you," I corrected. Same outcome. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. She took a swig from a bottle of expensive bourbon. "Want some?" The liquor burned a path down my throat, warming me from the inside. We passed the bottle back and forth in silence, watching the last light fade from the sky. "My divorce was finalized last week," she said finally, as if continuing a conversation we'd been having all along. 8 years, gone in a 15-minute court appearance. I hadn't known she was married, let alone divorcing. Her personal life was a carefully guarded mystery at work. "I'm sorry," I offered, inadequately. "Don't be." It was over long before we admitted it. She took another drink. David wanted the traditional set-up, successful wife who still comes home to cook dinner and discuss having children. She laughed bitterly. I built a company instead. With anyone else, I might have offered a comforting touch. With Lillian, I remained still, sensing she needed space more than sympathy. "The board wanted me to stay married," she continued. "Married female CEOs are more relatable to clients, apparently." The absurdity made me snort. What century are we living in? "Welcome to the corner office, Ellie." Her hand found mine in the darkness. "Still want it?" Her touch sent electricity up my arm. "I do." The moon rose higher, casting silver light across the water. We talked about everything: her childhood in a wealthy but cold family, my desperate scramble through community college while working 2 jobs, her fears about the company's future, my dreams of eventually creative directing. The bourbon bottle emptied, the temperature dropped. "I'm freezing," she admitted finally, though she made no move to leave. "We could go back," I suggested. "And be CEO and employee again?" She shook her head. "I'm not ready." The idea came to me with the recklessness that only bourbon and moonlight could inspire. "We could swim." "It's 50 degrees out." "The water's warmer than the air this time of year," I insisted, already pulling my sweater over my head. "Come on, when's the last time you did something just because it felt good?" I didn't wait for her answer, stripping down to my underwear and running into the water. The cold hit like a physical blow, stealing my breath. I dove under, emerging with a triumphant yell. "You're insane," Lillian called from shore. "Probably," I laughed. "Are you coming or not?" For a moment I thought she'd walk away. Instead, she stood and deliberately began unbuttoning her shirt. Even in moonlight, I could see her eyes never left mine. By the time she waded in, my heart was pounding from more than just the cold. We swam parallel to shore, occasionally bumping against each other in the darkness. When her hand found mine underwater, I didn't pull away. When she drew me closer, I went willingly. The first touch of her lips against mine was salt and bourbon, and something I'd been wanting for months. "We shouldn't," I whispered against her mouth, even as my arms wound around her neck. "I know," she agreed, kissing me again more deeply. Later, shivering and wrapped in beach towels she'd stashed nearby, we sat pressed together watching the stars. Everything had changed, and we both knew it. "What happens Monday?" I asked finally. She traced a finger along my jawline. "We compartmentalize. At work, nothing changes." "And outside of work?" Her smile was answer enough. 2 months after the lake, we'd perfected the art of secrecy. At work, Lillian remained demanding and professional. No lingering glances, no fingers brushing while passing documents. But a single text, "Files need reviewing," meant my evening would be spent in her downtown loft, where professionalism dissolved the moment her door closed behind us. We developed codes. The Henderson Project meant I missed her. Schedule alignment meant one of us was free tonight. In meetings, she'd tap her pen twice against her notepad when she was thinking about our last night together, making it nearly impossible for me to concentrate on quarterly projections. The game was exhilarating, dangerous, perfect. Until her mother called during one of our file reviews. I watched Lillian's expression change as she took the call, her body tensing beside me on the couch. No, Mother, I haven't changed my mind. Yes, I understand the implications. Of course I'll be there. She hung up and stared at her phone as if it might bite. Everything okay? I asked, pulling the sheet around myself. The annual Green family reunion. She sighed, dropping her head back against the couch. 3 days of passive-aggressive comments about my divorce and career choices. I kissed her shoulder. Sounds fun. It gets worse. My mother just informed me that David will be there. She turned to face me. My ex-husband. Apparently he's still part of the family. My stomach clenched. Is that normal, inviting exes to family functions? It is when your family never wanted the divorce in the first place. She stood, suddenly restless, pacing naked across her living room. David's father and mine built their legal practice together. The divorce was inconvenient. The bitterness in her voice told me there was more to this story than she'd shared. I watched her gather her scattered clothing, the easy intimacy of moments before evaporating. When is it? I asked. 2 weeks, at the family estate up north. She pulled on her shirt, buttoning it mechanically. 3 days of judgment and matchmaking attempts, with my mother parading David around like the son she never had. An idea formed in my mind, reckless, but I offered it anyway. What if he didn't go alone? Her hands paused on her buttons. Ellie. Not as your girlfriend, I clarified quickly. As your friend, your very supportive, completely platonic friend. The laugh that escaped her was half relief, half disbelief. You do that? Subject yourself to the Great Green Inquisition voluntarily? I've handled difficult client meetings. How much worse could your family be? Her expression told me exactly how much worse they could be. They'd eat you alive, she said softly. Thanks for the vote of confidence. That's not, she sat beside me taking my hands. My family is old money with new insecurities. They'll dig into everything, your background, education, intentions. And I'll answer honestly. I'm your colleague who's been helping with the company rebrand. You invited me to experience the famous Green family compound I've heard so much about. I squeezed her hands. I can be very convincing. For a week, she resisted. For another, she waffled. But as the date approached, her resolve weakened, especially after her brother called to inform her that their mother had seated her next to David at every meal. Fine, she conceded over takeout in her kitchen, but we need rules. Obviously. No touching, no inside jokes, no lingering looks. She ticked off each item on her fingers. My mother has radar for these things. I'll be the picture of professional friendship, I promised, even as I slid my foot up her calf under the table. Her eyes darkened. I'm serious, Ellie. So am I. Professional best friend, at your service. The shopping trip for appropriate clothes was her idea. I owned exactly nothing suitable for a weekend at what she casually referred to as the estate. We hit the high-end stores downtown, with Lillian scrutinizing everything I tried on. Too casual, she said to a dress I thought was perfectly fine. Too revealing, to another. To a third. What's wrong with me? I challenged, hands on hips. Her eyes softened. Nothing. Everything about you is perfect, that's the problem. In the fitting room of the fifth store, Lillian slipped in behind me as I struggled with the zipper of a conservative blue sundress. Her hands replaced mine, slowly drawing the zipper up my spine. This one, she murmured, her breath warm against my neck. You look beautiful but appropriate. I met her eyes in the mirror. Appropriate for what? Meeting the parents. Her fingers traced the line of my shoulders, even if we're pretending they're not meeting my girlfriend. Is that what I am? I turned to face her. Your girlfriend? Instead of answering, she kissed me, backing me against the fitting room mirror. The cool glass contrasted with her warm hands slipping under the sundress. We can't, I whispered, even as I pulled her closer. We shouldn't, she corrected, reaching past me to lock the fitting room door. Later, purchasing the slightly wrinkled blue dress, I caught the knowing smirk of the saleswoman. Some secrets, it seemed, were harder to keep than others. The Green family estate wasn't just a house, it was a statement. Situated on 20 acres overlooking Lake Michigan, the main building was a sprawling stone structure that had probably witnessed at least a century of wealth accumulation. As Lillian's Audi crunched up the gravel driveway, I fought the urge to check my appearance again. Remember, she said quietly, my mother will try to provoke you. My brother will condescend to you. Just smile and stick to our story. I nodded, suddenly questioning every life decision that had led me to this moment. Friends and colleagues, nothing more. And when we're alone? We're still just friends, I finished. I know, Lillian. A man in his 60s appeared on the front steps as we parked, not quite formal enough to be staff, too well dressed to be maintenance. Harrison, Lillian explained. Family attorney, my father's best friend, and the closest thing to a buffer we'll have this weekend. Harrison embraced Lillian warmly before turning curious eyes to me. And this must be your friend? Ellie Ross, I extended my hand. I work with Lillian at Green Digital. Ah, he replied, a world of speculation in that single syllable. Inside, the house was a museum of tasteful wealth, original artwork, antique furniture, and the subtle scent of lemon polish. Harrison led us through corridors lined with family photos where generations of Greens stared disapprovingly from gilded frames. Lillian, a cool voice called from the top of the staircase. Finally, the woman descending could only be Lillian's mother, same green eyes, same patrician nose, but none of her daughter's warmth. Her gaze swept over me like I was an unexpected stain on her carpet. Mother, this is Ellie Ross, my content strategist. How modern, Mrs. Green replied, barely touching my extended hand. Bringing employees to family functions? Ellie's been instrumental in our rebranding, Lillian said smoothly. I thought the break would be good for her. Indeed. Her eyes narrowed slightly. Well, you're in the blue room, Lillian. Your colleague can take the guest room in the east wing. The message was clear, as far apart as possible. Dinner was an exercise in restraint. Seated at one end of a table that could accommodate 20, I faced subtle interrogation from Mrs. Green while Lillian, positioned far from me, fielded questions about her future plans, now that she was available again. So, Ellie, I corrected gently. Of course. Where did you attend university? I took a sip of wine to steady myself. Grand Rapids Community College, then finished my bachelor's online while working full-time. The slight raise of her eyebrows spoke volumes. How resourceful! By dessert, I'd learned the conversational patterns. Any mention of my background earned thinly veiled disdain. Questions about Lillian's company were redirected to her eventual return to family priorities, and David, conspicuously absent tonight, was referenced constantly. Later, exploring the grounds to escape the stifling atmosphere, I found myself in a wood-paneled library. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves surrounded a massive desk where a man who could only be Lillian's brother sat reviewing documents. Sorry, I started to back out. I didn't mean to intrude. You're the employee, he stated rather than asked, not bothering to stand. James Green. Ellie Ross. He gestured to a chair. Tell me, Miss Ross, what's your real relationship with my sister? My heart stuttered, but I kept my face neutral. I'm her content strategist. Content strategist, he repeated with a smirk. And that requires weekend trips to family gatherings? Lillian thought I might benefit from understanding the family behind the brand. He laughed without humor. We're not the brand, we're the money. Or we were, until father decided Lillian deserved majority control. I remained silent, recognizing dangerous territory. You know, he continued, shuffling papers, our father's will had some irregularities. The board is concerned about Lillian's judgment lately. Bringing random employees to family functions won't help her case. There was nothing random about me being here, but I bit back the retort. Just something to consider, he added, dismissing me by returning to his documents. Outside the library, I nearly collided with Lillian. There you are, she whispered, glancing around before pulling me into an alcove. Surviving? Barely. Your family is horrible? I warned you. Your brother mentioned something about your father's will having irregularities? Her expression darkened. James never accepted that father left me controlling interest in the company. He's been looking for ways to contest it since the funeral. The sound of approaching footsteps separated us quickly. Mrs. Green rounded the corner with a man in tow, tall, conventionally handsome, with the confident bearing of someone who's never been told no. Lillian, look who arrived early, her mother said with transparent delight. I knew immediately who he was before she even said his name. David, Lillian's voice was carefully neutral. I didn't expect you until tomorrow. Couldn't miss the chance to see everyone, he replied smoothly, eyes flicking to me with practiced charm. And you must be the content specialist I've heard about. Strategist? I corrected, accepting his firm handshake. His smile never reached his eyes. Of course. Lillian always finds such interesting people to surround herself with. As we stood there in the hallway, the air thick with unspoken tensions, I realized this weekend would be far more complicated than playing just friends. Between family politics and ex-husbands, I'd stepped into a minefield where every casual interaction was laden with history and agenda. And I still had 2 more days to survive. Morning found me prowling restlessly through the East Wing, having barely slept. Between the unsettling conversations and being separated from Lillian, I'd tossed and turned all night. The formal breakfast wasn't for another hour, so I decided to explore. The green estate was even more imposing in daylight. Family photographs lined hallways like a museum exhibition chronicling generations of success. I paused at one showing a younger Lillian in graduation robes, standing beside a stern-faced man I assumed was her father. He was harder on her than any of us. I startled at Mrs. Green's voice behind me. "I'm sorry, I was just snooping?" Her smile was brittle. "It's fine, Ellie. Natural curiosity about your employer's background." The pause before employer hung between us. "She looks serious even at graduation," I observed, trying to redirect. "Lillian has always carried the weight of expectations." Mrs. Green stepped closer, examining the photo. "My husband saw something in her that he didn't see in James. A ruthlessness masked by charm." The description was unnervingly accurate. "Is that why he left her the company?" Her eyes narrowed fractionally. "You seem quite interested in family matters for an employee." "I'm interested in Lillian," I admitted, then clarified, "as someone I respect professionally." "Come," she said suddenly. "I want to show you something." She led me through a maze of corridors to what appeared to be Lillian's childhood bedroom. Unlike the rest of the house's formal decor, this room held personal touches, debate trophies, economics textbooks, and photographs of a younger, more carefree Lillian. "She was always different," Mrs. Green said, running her fingers along a bookshelf. "Even as a child, she questioned everything, challenged everyone." A wistful note entered her voice. "Richard, my husband, encouraged it. I worried about it." I moved toward a corkboard covered with faded photos. Lillian at the lake. Lillian with a group of friends. Lillian with a young man who looked vaguely familiar. "Is that David?" I asked. "They met at 16. Mrs. Green joined me. Childhood sweethearts, really, before ambition became her only relationship. The comment stung, though it wasn't aimed at me. "People change. Priorities shift." "Indeed." She turned to face me fully. "Which brings me to my question, Ellie. What are your true intentions with my daughter?" My heart pounded. "I'm not sure what you mean." "Please." Her tone sharpened. "I've raised 3 children in high society. I recognize attraction when I see it." I kept my expression neutral even as panic surged. "Mrs. Green, I admire Lillian professionally. Let me be clear." She stepped closer. "My daughter is vulnerable right now. Her judgment is compromised. Whatever you think might develop between you would destroy her standing with the board. The company her father built would suffer. With all due respect, you're misunderstanding our relationship." "Am I?" She arched an eyebrow. "Then why does she look at you the way she never looked at David?" Before I could formulate a response, footsteps approached. Lillian appeared in the doorway, her expression shifting from surprise to wariness. "Mother? Ellie? What's happening?" "Just showing your friend your childhood accomplishments," Mrs. Green replied smoothly. "Breakfast is ready," Lillian said, her eyes questioning mine. When her mother left, Lillian closed the door. "What did she say to you?" "Nothing important," I lied, not wanting to add to her stress. "Ellie." I sighed. "She suspects about us." Lillian cursed under her breath. I knew this was a mistake. The words hurt more than they should have. "Coming here, or us? That's not what I..." She stopped, reaching for my hand. "Being here, pretending. It's harder than I expected." After breakfast, a tense affair with David seated beside Lillian as promised. I slipped away to the library, hoping for solitude. Instead, I found scattered papers on the massive desk. Normally, I wouldn't pry, but a document headed Green Digital Holdings Shareholder Vote caught my attention. Skimming it quickly, my stomach dropped. James was gathering support for an emergency board meeting to question Lillian's leadership, citing personal entanglements affecting company direction. Fresh footsteps sent me scrambling away from the desk, but not before I'd photographed the document with my phone. Ducking behind a shelf, I waited as James and a man I didn't recognize entered. "The evidence is circumstantial," the stranger said. "Unless you can prove this employee relationship is inappropriate." "Mother's certain," James replied. "And once we establish that, we can argue Lillian's decision-making is compromised. Father's will specify stable leadership. If we moved at next week's meeting, too soon. We need concrete proof, photos, witness statements." They moved deeper into the library, voices fading. I slipped out, heart racing, and went searching for Lillian. I found her in the garden, looking peacefully at the distant lake view. "We need to talk," I said urgently. "Your brother is." My warning was cut short by her lips on mine. After a day of pretending, the sudden contact overwhelmed me. I melted into her, forgetting momentarily about documents and conspiracies. "I've wanted to do that since last night," she murmured against my mouth. "Lillian, we can't. Someone might see." "I don't care anymore." And as if summoned by those dangerous words, a gasp from the garden path startled us apart. James stood there, expression transitioning from shock to triumphant satisfaction. "Well," he said coldly, "I believe the board will find this extremely relevant to their concerns." Breakfast the next morning was nuclear. James had wasted no time sharing his discovery with everyone who mattered. Mrs. Green sat at the head of the table, her face a mask of disappointed fury. David watched with barely concealed satisfaction. Even Harrison looked uncomfortable, avoiding eye contact as he pushed eggs around his plate. "I've called an emergency board meeting for Monday," James announced to the silent table, "to address this situation." Lillian's knuckles went white around her coffee cup. "What situation would that be exactly?" "Your inappropriate relationship with a subordinate," he replied coldly. "A clear conflict of interest and violation of company policy." "A policy that doesn't exist," Lillian countered. "The board will determine that." James smiled thinly. "Father may have given you controlling interest, but even you can be removed for cause." Mrs. Green finally spoke, her voice like ice. "Lillian, I expected better judgment from you. After everything your father built." "Don't invoke Dad in this," Lillian snapped. "He valued authenticity above appearances." "He valued family legacy," her mother corrected. "This dalliance threatens everything." The word dalliance hit me like a slap. Is that what they thought we were? What cut deeper was Lillian's silence afterward. No defense, no correction. "Ellie has done nothing wrong," Lillian finally said. But it was too little, too late. David leaned forward, all false concern. "No one's blaming Ellie. We understand the appeal of powerful women." He gave me a knowing look that made my skin crawl. "But there are appropriate channels for advancement." The implication was clear. I'd slept my way into Lillian's good graces. My career, everything I'd worked for, reduced to a sexual transaction. "That's enough," I stood abruptly. "I'm not going to sit here and be insulted." "Ellie." Lillian reached for my arm, but I pulled away. "No, I came here as a favor to you." My voice shook with anger and hurt. I didn't sign up to have my professional reputation demolished by people who don't know the first thing about me. I stormed out, ignoring the shocked faces. Outside, the summer air felt thick with approaching rain, matching my turbulent emotions. I'd made it halfway to the gardens when Lillian caught up. "Ellie, wait." I turned, tears threatening. "For what? For you to defend me? That ship has sailed. You don't understand what's at stake." "I understand perfectly. Your company, your family legacy, your reputation." Each word tasted bitter. "Where do I fit in those priorities, Lillian? Somewhere after the quarterly earnings report?" Thunder rumbled in the distance as her expression hardened. "That's not fair. I've built my entire life around this company. And I've built mine around my professional integrity." The first drops of rain began to fall, which your family just questioned in the most humiliating way possible. "I can fix this." "How? By denying we're involved? By making me the office predator who seduced the boss?" I shook my head. Or worse, confirming it but treating me like some mistake you made during a divorce crisis? Her silence was damning. That's what I thought. The rain was falling steadily now, soaking through my clothes, but I barely felt it. Maybe we should end this before it destroys everything else. The words hung between us like physical things. Lillian flinched as if I'd struck her. You don't mean that? She said finally. I do. My voice broke. I can't be your dirty secret, Lillian. I can't watch you choose your family's approval over us every time. You're asking me to choose between you and everything I've worked for. No, I'm asking you to choose both. To stand up and say our relationship doesn't diminish your leadership or my competence. I wiped rain from my face, or maybe tears. But you can't even do that at a family breakfast, so what hope do we have against a board of directors? The rain intensified, but neither of us moved. We stood there, getting drenched, at an impasse that seemed insurmountable. I need to leave, I finally said. I'll call a car. Don't be ridiculous, we're miles from town. I'll figure it out. I turned away. I always do. Back in the guest room, I threw my belongings into my suitcase with shaking hands. Everything felt ruined, my relationship, possibly my career, definitely my heart. I'd allowed myself to believe Lillian and I could overcome the power differential, the secrecy, the complications. How naive. An hour later, I was checked into the only motel in the nearest town, a dated place with flickering lights and suspicious stains on the carpet. The rain had become a full thunderstorm, matching my mood as I sat on the creaking bed. I should be applying for jobs, I thought grimly. There was no way I could return to Green Digital after this weekend. Even if Lillian survived the board meeting, our working relationship was untenable. Everything I'd built, my recovery from unemployment, my growing portfolio, my professional confidence, felt like it was washing away with the rain outside. For the first time since that fateful day I'd discovered Lillian's livestream, I wondered if going back home to my parents in Traverse City might be my only option. The thought made me physically ill, admitting defeat, starting over, again. I fell asleep to the sound of rain hammering against the windows and the dull ache of a heart I'd foolishly given to a woman who couldn't publicly hold it. 3 days of hiding in a motel room gave me plenty of time to think, and research, and get angry. By day 2, after my initial heartbreak subsided, I started digging into Green Digital's corporate structure. Public records, LinkedIn profiles, press releases, anything I could access from my laptop. If Lillian's career was about to implode because of me, I needed to understand exactly what we were up against. What I discovered surprised me. The board couldn't simply remove Lillian, regardless of her personal relationships. Her father had structured the company with safeguards. She could only be ousted for actions that demonstrably harmed the company financially or ethically. An office romance, however frowned upon, didn't qualify. By day 3, fueled by gas station coffee and righteous indignation, I began contacting colleagues. Not about Lillian and me, that would only validate James's accusations, but about her leadership. Hey, it's Ellie, I said when Marco from design picked up. Quick question, purely for a personal project. What's the biggest positive change you've seen since Lillian took over as CEO? The question, repeated to 15 different employees, yielded consistent answers: increased revenue, improved workplace culture, stronger client relationships. I documented everything, building a case that Lillian's leadership had objectively benefited the company. I was halfway through a thoroughly researched email to Lillian when my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Emergency board meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. James moved faster than expected. Harrison. My stomach dropped. Harrison, Lillian's family attorney, had somehow found my number. The meeting that was supposed to be next week was happening tomorrow. James must have been more threatened than I realized. I called the number back immediately. How did you get my number? I demanded when Harrison answered. Occupational necessity, he replied cryptically. More importantly, are you coming back? Why would I? Because contrary to appearances at that disastrous breakfast, Lillian Green needs you. His voice softened. And if I may speak plainly, you need her too. I don't. Save it for someone who hasn't watched this play out before. Richard and Margaret, Lillian's parents, had the same fire, the same stubborn pride. It nearly destroyed them as well. The revelation stunned me momentarily. Mrs. Green seems to hate everything about my existence. Margaret resents seeing her own story repeated. She fought her family to marry Richard, sacrificed her own career to support his. She doesn't want that for Lillian. He paused. Or for you. I'm not sacrificing anything. Lillian is the one unwilling to stand up for us. Is she? Harrison challenged. Or is she terrified of losing the only thing she's ever been certain of, her ability to lead this company? The question hit uncomfortably close to home. The board meeting is at 9, he continued. I've emailed you the company bylaws. Section 4, paragraph 7 might interest you particularly. I spent the night reviewing the bylaws and preparing. At 7 a.m., I checked out of the motel and called a car to take me to Grand Rapids. By 8:30, I was standing in front of Green Digital's gleaming headquarters, my heart pounding but my resolve firm. The receptionist's eyes widened when I walked in. News traveled fast. I'm here for the board meeting, I said confidently. It's restricted access, she stammered. I'm aware. Please tell Lillian Ross that Ellie Ross is here. While waiting, I straightened my slightly rumpled blazer, the best I could do after living out of a suitcase, and mentally rehearsed what I needed to say. Minutes later, Harrison appeared. Good timing, he said, guiding me toward the elevator. They're just getting started. The boardroom fell silent when I entered. 8 stern faces turned toward me. James looked furious. Mrs. Green appeared shocked. And Lillian, her expression cycled rapidly from surprise to hope to worry. This meeting is private, James snapped. Actually, I stepped forward, placing my folder on the table. As the subject of this emergency session, I have the right to address the allegations against me. Section 4, paragraph 7 of your company bylaws. Harrison smiled slightly. James glared at him. You have 5 minutes, the oldest board member said. I passed out copies of the document I'd prepared. Before you is evidence of Green Digital's performance under Lillian Green's leadership. Revenue up 32%. Client retention improved by 18%. Employee satisfaction at its highest recorded level. This is irrelevant, James interrupted. The issue is her relationship with you. The issue, I corrected, is whether her leadership has harmed this company. The evidence says otherwise. A personal relationship with a subordinate creates conflict of interest, Mrs. Green said quietly. You're right. I met her gaze directly. Which is why, effective immediately, I'm transferring to Apex Marketing. The announcement caused a stir. Apex was our biggest competitor. Unless, I continued, the board approves my transfer to the creative department, reporting to creative director Marcus Chen instead of directly to Lillian. A murmur ran through the room. As for my relationship with Lillian Green, I took a deep breath. Yes, we're involved personally. It developed after my hiring, was never a factor in my employment, and has been kept strictly separate from our professional interactions. Lillian stood suddenly. If I may address the board. For 5 remarkable minutes, I watched her transform from the defensive woman at the breakfast table to the powerhouse CEO I'd fallen for. She highlighted my contributions to the company, acknowledged the complications of our relationship, and proposed a transparent solution involving HR oversight and the reporting structure change. My personal life should be judged on one metric only, she concluded. Has it impaired my ability to lead this company successfully? The numbers say no. The vote was 6-3 in her favor. Afterward, as board members filed out, Lillian approached me cautiously. How did you know about Section 4, paragraph 7? She asked. Harrison, I admitted. He seems to be rooting for us. Surprising, considering he watched my parents' marriage implode. Maybe that's exactly why. We stood awkwardly, the weight of unresolved hurt still between us. I've missed you, she finally said. I've been busy saving your career, I replied, but softened it with a small smile. Our careers, she corrected, tentatively taking my hand. Partners? In every sense of the word, I agreed. The autumn festival transformed downtown Grand Rapids into a riot of red and gold. Street vendors lined the riverfront, the scent of spiced cider and kettle corn filling the air. Under normal circumstances, I would have been delighted by the celebration. But standing beside Marcus Chen, as he reviewed our team's promotional booth, my attention kept drifting across the crowd. 2 months had passed since the board meeting. My transfer to the creative department had gone smoothly, though I missed working directly with Lillian. We'd been careful, almost painfully so, maintaining professional distance at work while slowly rebuilding our personal relationship in private. Earth to Ellie. Marcus waved a hand before my face. The client will be here in 20 minutes. Are we missing anything? Sorry, I refocused on our display. Everything looks perfect. Except your attention span. He smiled knowingly. Go find her. I've got this covered. I didn't need to be told twice. Weaving through the festival crowd, I spotted Lillian near the main stage, deep in conversation with the mayor. Even from a distance, her commanding presence was unmistakable. The autumn light caught in her dark hair, now worn looser than during our early days together, one of many small changes reflecting her gradual unburdening. She saw me approaching, and her professional smile softened into something more genuine. Something just for me. Mayor Phillips, have you met Ellie Ross? She heads our creative strategy for the city's tourism campaign. The mayor extended his hand. The Riverside concept was brilliant. My office has received nothing but compliments. We chatted briefly before he was pulled away by an aide. When we were alone, Lillian's shoulders relaxed visibly. Fancy meeting you here, I teased. Complete coincidence, she agreed, eyes dancing. Though I did hear a rumor about a talented creative director who might be worth talking to. Former content strategist, I corrected. The promotion hasn't gone through yet. Hasn't it? Her enigmatic smile suggested otherwise. Around us, families meandered between booths, couples held hands, and no one gave us a second glance, just two women talking at a festival. The anonymity felt liberating after months of scrutiny. Walk with me? She suggested. We strolled along the riverfront, maintaining a professional distance while navigating through crowds. I noticed how Lillian nodded at acquaintances, but no longer stopped to engage in the constant networking that had once consumed her public appearances. The board approved the expansion, she said as we reached a quieter section of the Riverwalk. We break ground on the Seattle office in January. That's fantastic. James must be thrilled, I added sarcastically. Actually, he's being surprisingly supportive. She laughed at my skeptical expression. I know, I was shocked too, but nearly losing control at the board meeting was apparently the wake-up call he needed. And your mother? Lillian sighed. Baby steps. She sent a housewarming gift for the new condo. The toaster that doesn't match anything in your kitchen? That would be the one. We paused at the river's edge, watching fallen leaves drift on the current. Around us, festival lights began twinkling as dusk approached. When Lillian's fingers brushed against mine, I didn't pull away. I've been thinking, she said quietly, about how much has changed in a year. From unemployment to creative director, I mused. Not bad. From hiding who I am to. She hesitated, then visibly gathered her courage. To this. She took my hand fully in hers, intertwining our fingers in plain view of anyone passing by. My heart stuttered. Lillian? I'm tired of compartmentalizing, she said firmly. Work Lillian, family Lillian, private Lillian. I want to just be me, with you, wherever we are. A group of colleagues from the marketing department walked by, their eyes widening slightly at our joined hands. Lillian noticed but didn't let go. Are you sure? I asked quietly. What about? The board can't touch me now. The Seattle expansion doubled our stock value. She smiled. And it turns out most people care far less about who I'm dating than my brother assumed. As if to prove her point, she leaned forward and kissed me softly, right there beside the Grand River with festival-goers streaming past. It wasn't dramatic or showy, just a simple declaration that we were done hiding. Later that evening, after the client meetings and public appearances were finished, we stood on the rooftop of her downtown building. It was the same spot where she'd first invited me to lunch 6 months earlier, back when I was just the nervous new hire and she was the untouchable CEO. The city lights sparkled below, mirroring the stars emerging above. Winter's chill was creeping into the air, promising snow within weeks. I pulled my jacket tighter as Lillian handed me a glass of champagne. To new beginnings, she toasted. And no more secrets, I added. We clinked glasses as the first snowflakes of the season began drifting lazily through the night air. I have something for you, Lillian said suddenly, reaching into her pocket. The small velvet box made my heart leap into my throat. "It's not," she clarified quickly, seeing my expression. "Well, not yet. That's still coming, if you'll have me someday." Inside the box was a key. "Move in with me," she said simply. "No more separate lives, no more pretending." I looked at the key gleaming in the soft light, thinking about the journey from that first live stream to this moment. From anonymous username to partner, from hiding to standing proudly in the open. "Yes," I whispered, closing my fingers around the key as snowflakes melted on my cheeks. "No more pretending,